So oftentimes in our own life and also in the life of our clients, it's a good idea to try to get a bit of a handle on where people are and what they're going through. Ian Percy, an American author, wrote a great book called Going Deep in Life and Leadership. And I've taken this model from there. It's called The 6 Stations of the Inner Journey. And what Ian says is the first station that people go through is this sense of innocence. And if you look at a newborn child or a baby or an infant, you get that sense of innocence. And that little baby has to trust everybody in the world. They are dependent on us. But when we look at them, the context around that is hope. We hope the world is going to be a better place for them. We hope that they grow up and have a fantastic life and so on. Now, that usually goes through until about late childhood, so maybe the ages of 8 or 10. And then all of a sudden something else happens. And anyone that's got teenage kids knows this, that the next phase is what we would call the independence phase. And this is where people start to look for that sense of who am I? So kids will start to want to wear their own clothes, not the ones that you pick for them. They'll have different hairdos than you've ever had. They'll be listening to different music. They'll want their own room. They won't want to be constrained by your sets of rules. And it's a beautiful time of life, even if it's frustrating for us as parents. But it is the context of self. So that the child is now turning into an independent person who is trying to work out for themselves where they fit in the world. Now, around the ages of mid-20s to mid-30s, an interesting phase happens, which is what we call institution. And the institutional phase is just after I've found myself and I've been on my world tour and I've done all the things that I want to do. I then start to look for the institutional parts of life. So I want a career. It's no good backpacking around the world anymore. I want to have a long-term relationship. I want to have a family. This is the time when mortgages start to be built and houses start to be chased and so on. And it's the context in there is struggle. And the reason it is that just after finding who I am and how wonderful and unique I am, I then start to put that aside and start to work in the world of perhaps compromising myself a little bit. So if I've been living in this world of struggle for a little while, the fourth phase then starts to arise, and that is irritation. And I start to get irked by a certain number of things. It is the reason why I have lots of clients in the world of career transition, that they've got to about 40 or 45 or whatever that is. They've been doing the same thing for 20 years. They're stuck in this institution. They don't feel like they've got any sense of self anymore. But it's a beautiful time because it's what we would say, it's the context is freedom. And people in that place are looking for freedom. Can you, as an advisor, be aware of where they are, understand that they're a little bit peeved and irked by the world situation right now, and what we can do for them? The fifth phase is one called insight. And this is where I need to start to look inwards and find out, what do I really want for me? What do I really want for me and my family? It's a beautiful place to play in 3, 4 and 5 and start working with your clients around that. Because in here, the context is wisdom, and we're starting to work out what I want for me and my life for the rest of my life. And then the last phase, and the one why we often say that the oldest people in the world are often the happiest. Old age is a happy time because it's about integration, and I can bring all of these parts into my life. I'm happy in my own skin. I know who I am, and it's the birth of peace. The context there is peace. Now, when you're looking at your clients, if you have a bunch of new people that are just starting to build some wealth for themselves, you can see whether they'll be looking at that. It will be quite difficult to drive them into a hard-edged plan where they have to put a lot of money away week by week by week, because travel and going out with their mates and all those things is important. Can you see why in here, in this struggle, it is very, very difficult to get ideal clients in there, because they don't have a lot of disposable income. Why? Because they're putting kids through school, they're paying off mortgages, they may even have their own HECS bill still hanging around. But it is in this age of around 40 onwards that we start to get some real fertile ground to work with people. Now, this is a stages model for life, but understand this. Your business goes through this as well. As an advisor, you start off and you think, wow, I'm going to be a financial advisor and I'm not going to be like everybody else. But then you start to have to live by the rules that ASIC place in, and you start to look at your career and going, I'm just turning up every day. Where is that sense of freedom? And again, listening to the anger and making some choices, some wise choices about what you want. It's very often the reason why people come into a lead advisor course is because they want to build greater meaning to their work. And just as an aside, I think it's also a good idea to look at this as a relational model as well, in that in your relationship with your partner or spouse, how we start off and you look at each other across the room and isn't it beautiful? And we're going to have a great life together, and then off you go, and we're not going to be like our parents. We're going to be completely different to them, and then all of a sudden, here you are living, in your suburban triple-fronted, 3-bedroom brick veneer house, and you're on Struggle Street, and on it goes. So relationship is like that as well. A great model, not because we can jump a step. It's very, very difficult to jump a step, but I think a lot of times what happens is that people get down into here, and then they start to want to jump back into there. This is why the biggest spike in divorces, for instance, in Australia, is around that 50 years of age group. So just keep an eye on your own things and understanding that the irritation is not bad. It's there to help you and tell you what you need to change so you can start to develop a richer life for yourself.